Okay, folks, I am going to read for you tonight some poems from this book that I published called 6 Dialogic Poetry Chapbooks. 6 short collections of about 40 poems each on all kinds of different subjects. And the first part of the 6-pack is the closest to home, because here what we have is artistic presentations of interviews with taxi drivers, both in this area and the Manhattan area. Of course, no realistic portraiture is intended or guaranteed or designed, but rather they are fictive cab drivers, embodying the best of the experience that I've had in my many years of taxi driver interviewing. Here's one of my favorites. It's called, I Have No Friends, I'll Let Them Go. I have no friends, I let them go. I've only just my girlfriend and my Harley, trailer and my truck. And I've a dog, a lab. The Lord Almighty's been, yes, he's been good to me. And when he gives a test, he's testing for the testimony that will come and must. You'd say I had all kinds of good and evil luck. I spent my youth in drink and drugs. My friends were in that life, but they were not my friends. The single best and only friend you have, my grandma liked to say, is named the Mirror Man. Big house in Endicott I used to own. 2 mobile homes, 2 trailers. Let me tell you, scumbags are the ones that sell you stuff. No more betrayal and deceit. I walked away from all the things you'll never need. I downsized. Not to boast, me and my girlfriend don't need much. We'll get a single room apartment soon. I've had it rough, but I at least have mastered self-sufficiency. We eat, but really next to nothing. We don't mind. And she's like me. She'll never smoke or drink. A nurse. She likes her work. And I like mine, if you could call this work, and not some rotten cheating deal. So we make a team. I'm independent. Folks aren't kind. The world's not kind. It's filled with treachery and worse. And life is hard. But harder if you're stupid. All the homeless bums that waste their life with drugs and booze, I can't respect. I have my pride. See this tattoo? I'm proud of it. The flag. 10 years, though, on TV. My childhood was Vietnam. Each evening, killing, death, despair, and nonsense on a stupid evening news. My dog's my comfort. Harley. I'll admit to you, if giving up my heart would save his life, then he would have my heart. I'd give that dog my final breath. Thank you. You can imagine what fun it is for me to take a cab ride. This one is...
Oh, I have.
Hmm?
I have.
This one is a woman I talked to. It's no end interesting. My oldest, out the window of a 2nd-story room. A rope of knotted sheets, and she was gone. I told the rest, now close your doors. Do not respond, or this I guarantee. You're going to a foster home, whoever lets her in. Society for Child Protection, I will call them up, and they'll collect the ones that fail to mind me. That I swear. My 2nd oldest, she's the snitch. Her finger on her lips comes up a little later saying, Pebbles, did you hear? She's throwing them at all the windows of the other kids. I didn't do a thing. I'm only saying so you'll know. I went downstairs to greet the culprit waiting at the door. She ran in, hid, and cowered under blankets, not to hear. My 3rd girl is artistic, so wherever she was put, she stayed, intent and self-absorbed and concentrating hard. She loved to draw and paint or watch a movie, never moved. My oldest boy's the midnight raider who attacked the fridge, ate what he shouldn't. Then, next morning, food is missing. Well, I wouldn't know. A blank expression, empty every face. The boys were better than the girls. When puberty arrived, there's not a one you'd recognize. Under their breath you'd hear mutterings, running, banging, slamming. I removed the doors and put up curtains. Look, you pay no rent, you have no job. I am the queen. That's it. And no one else may slam a door. Yep, 7 kids and 13 grandkids, and you know what's best? The thing I most enjoy in life is when my grandkids come and I can spoil them all I want, and then I say goodbye. Later I'll get a call. Guess what your granddaughter just did? She, on and so forth. Suddenly she has become your granddaughter. Get that? It's fun when everybody comes to have a meal and someone says, do you remember when we used to? Oh, do I remember? Thank you very much, and may you have 10,000 grandkids and enjoy your meal. Okay. Two and a half, 3 years, I'd say, I played guitar. A longtime friend had asked me when his own broke if I'd loan him mine. It made no never mind to me, so I okayed that, but I never saw the guy again. He and the instrument were gone for good. His parents couldn't find him, no one could. End of my musical career. But then I always have enough to do. And more, my motorbike, returned it to the store. Just had no time to ride it. There it stood, unused in the garage, so out the door. I'll fix your window on a rainy day, like Monday, a Tuesday, maybe I can't say. Take a deep breath. I get involved in these. Well, I'm a fiddler. Maybe at some music fest? No. I remember people used to slap my hand when I would try the clarinet at school in band. I know I've met you, though. Where? I'd never guessed. And every year, when we'd put on our Christmas play with music, I was told, now you'll be merry, dear. They wouldn't let me sing in choir. That's what I'd hear. You can be merry. That was always what they'd say. And what was Mary's role? Just kneeling in the manger. Oh, so you wouldn't sing. The choir'd be out of danger. They wouldn't have to hear you. Right, you got it. I had great revenge, though, teaching 3rd and 2nd grade. 38 years I did it, and the songs we made. I'm now retired, but all my grandkids live nearby. Well, here's a rather strange one. In this interview, I'm not talking to the cab driver. Another customer is. The Brass Rail Tavern, and he's in the bag, you see, and right away he's saying, drunken-like to me, just take me to my girlfriend's. To my girlfriend's. I go see her every week. She wants a man to lie beside her while she sleeps, and every week I go. You go to see her every week. Just so. It's like that. Like, it's an appointment that we keep. We get butt naked, and we both fall asleep. You fall asleep. And right away, and nothing more. That's all we do. It's what I come to see her for. But doesn't she? Well, yes, a little lovey-dove she sometimes, but no, that I can't be thinking of. Growing up together, we were neighbors, see? She's like a sister now, she really is to me. So, no, I can't be doing that. Just can't. Okay, I see we're here. Well, thank you, sir. Goodbye. Oh, Well, one nice thing is I get excited and then I do them rather quickly, and then I can do more. It's like a kind of diary, isn't it? What it's like to... I have a bit of an eye impairment. I've got divergent focus, so I don't see depth. And without stereo vision, you're not really supposed to drive a car. That's why I take cabs. But don't bother feeling sorry for me. I don't have to pay car insurance and gas or anything.
Yes.
And I make wonderful friends.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have a car for a while, and now I do. And I forgot all those awful...
Yes, you forget them.
Yes.
Oh, here's an interesting thing. I'll never have one like this again. Here we go. After 10 years of marriage, so he said, I gave her a divorce gift and we went together to Hawaii where we spent $10,000. My own thinking led me next to go alone to a hotel, check in Atlantic City, stay some days. I'd tell the judge my cash was gone. It pays into the picture. Yes, I knew quite well. It would. $2,000 to my name. That's what I said. Equipment money came later. I told my friend to sell the lot. With 50,000 smackos, I'd begin my life again. My wife, she didn't win one penny. Freedom, that was what I bought. You never can tell what you're going to be talking about. I'm looking forward to the spring. I always go out to an auction. For $100, say, $150, that's the most I'll ever pay. I get a car, I'll drive a couple weeks or so, and then in the demolition derby at the fair at Whitney Point, I'll smash it up and hope to win. Do women try? Oh yeah, you bet. They get right in. There's not too many of them, but you'll find them there. How do you win that race? You smash up all the rest. If you're the final one left driving, that's the test. Are there fatalities? Yeah, but I've never seen a fatal accident myself. Once a machine went up in flames. They had to cut the seatbelt so the driver could get out. Them's the brakes, you know.
That's what a demolition is.
Oh, this is going to be fun because here I get to talk with a really interested cab driver. And he starts by asking me questions. I don't have to talk at all at the beginning. So what went on tonight? You had a class to teach? No, went to hear a great piano concert played by 4 hands, 6 or 8. 4 women, 1 or 2. Pianos. Contest. Like the banjo's dueling? Aha, you saw Deliverance. Guess how I knew. Well, maybe there was rivalry involved, but each musician blended well with all the rest. Afraid I still don't get it. What's the problem? Simple thing, if you'd have seen it. Hard, though, for the manager. How many women per piano? That was her responsibility. The benches had to be of different sizes, first for 2 and then for 3. Sounds really crazy. I'd have loved it. So did I. 6 hands, a single keyboard, fun to hear and see. All 30 fingers going presto, blurry dream that made you dizzy watching. Mozart, Schumann, slow, then Polovetsky dances brought before your eye. The whirling maidens with their shawls and panoply. The Danse Macabre, timed just right for Halloween. 4 women slashing through the saber dance. Hey, whoa!
One piano.
Sometimes 2.
Oh. They didn't hit hands every once in a while.
They never hit each other. No, it was marvelous. They were magicians, not just musicians. Okay. What? Football? I have to say my attitudes are split. There's danger, but it's always wonderful to play. Though rodeo's the ultimate, with horses, they are risky. 4 arm surgeries, I had to quit. But even that, I always loved to ride. You asked about Thanksgiving. Hunting with my dad before the meal. That's what we've planned. He'll be so glad it's going to be his final time. Can't be denied. He's 67, but he smoked. It's sad but clear. Electric lungs, the only thing that keeps him here. Yet he's a fighter. People having lungs like his are mostly kept in bed. That's the way he is. Great burgers you can make with turkey meat and deer. And being in the woods again, that caps the year. Okay.
Are those your own memories, or?
Yeah. I have to tell you, I have practiced my ear memory very diligently, because when my daughter was growing up, from age 1 to age 18, when she graduated high school, I kept a diary of her. At first on manual typewriter and then on computer. I never did learn to type on an electric. And so I've got hundreds of pages. I guarantee you it is longer than Dr. Johnson's Life of Samuel Boswell. No, the other way around. Boswell's Life of Johnson.
Yeah.
Well, here's a fun piece. Maybe we'll finish the taxi driver poems with that one. I never valued staying still. I loved to have two jobs: delivering the beer and tending bar at night. That's why I'm here, because I won't retire. I've always moved. I was the 13th child, and you can guess, that also meant I had a lot to do. 13 is not unlucky. To a Jew, it means the age of manhood that you bless. Speaking of that, I could have been a priest. Oh, are you so religious? Well, at least I was an altar boy. But then one time, me and some other kids, we drank the wine. Out of the chalice, too. That slammed the door. Nobody mentioned priesthood anymore. That gives you a little sample. Now, the next thing I do is something rather different. Let's see. Poem 41 is called Eternity. And what I've done in the next 5 or 6 poems, I have taken this wonderful book that I bought by Henri Magritte. Have you ever heard of Magritte, the artist? You have. Well, he's a Belgian artist and a surrealist. And you could say that in this painting here, he gives you what you might well call a surrealist manifesto. Eternity, what's eternal about it? Basically what you have is, on the left, Jesus apparently, and then on the right, Dante, and then the third one isn't quite a bust, it's a pat of Belgian butter, styled the way they used to sell it in Flanders around the time of the First World War.
You always had something incongruous.
Yes, incongruous, that's what surrealism is all about. Yeah. It's as if he was painting a painting that would convey the message, look, I am going to bring things together and you're not going to know why, and that's the way I want it. Okay? You might imagine what kind of poem I'd write about that, or maybe you can't. I couldn't. I had to wait and see what happened. With Jesus, Dante, lump of Belgian butter, in wavy mold form, wooden spatula, our roaming soldier to America brought quite a war haul. Yet I'd claim to utter a triple list, or here in a museum, to picture them co-equal, each a bust, will mirror what the lyric-minded must in dreaming feel. Surrealist Lyceum, where every night an eager, keen Magritte will teach the hen kai pan all things together. Cleave means adhere, and cut apart, untether. The idyll of the id, the sour and sweet, all things alloyed, allied, alarmed, allayed, elide, elude, lead, lied, allude, I'll aid. I could translate all of that, but who wants to bother, right? The whole idea is to get yourself into a free association sound stream.
Didn't he always have a hat with no face?
Yeah,
Something very
that's
wild.
you got it. You hit the specialty of Magritte. The hat, the bowler hat, and the no face. In fact, I wrote a poem about one like that. Let me turn to it right away since you mentioned it. I asked several people, have you heard of Magritte? They say no, never. I say, I'll bet you know who he is. Let me just say two words. Man, bowler hat,
No face.
no face, or apple.
Or apple.
Usually hat and apple will do it. Okay, let's see. I don't happen to have one with the apple, but you're right, the most important thing is the no face. Here's the picture. Perfect Magritte, isn't it? This time it's a white bird instead of an apple. But the point is no face. Okay, got that? I may be mirrored in a mother eye, but what if I am not? Am not reflected. My image will be lastingly affected. I'm never there in you. So where am I? The artist paints a visage undetected. The whiteness, rather, of a bird flies by to stop, the human eyes to hide. A sigh. Effaced identity. A mind infected. Is it, here goes, the Holy Spirit? Why, no, it is not. For all alone, rejected, the child will find birds cold. Unresurrected and unreturned, a buried love will lie. Two faces gone, and who will find that odd? A hidden face of death, a hidden God. Now maybe you still don't know what I'm getting at. I was going to read this one at the end, but I guess I'll fill you in on the bio just right now. When he was less than 10 years old, his mother died. She threw herself in the Seine River in the middle of Paris. And when he saw her at the morgue, she had an apron raised up over her face, which could not be seen. I think that says a lot about these paintings.
Yes, I didn't know that, no. But for some reason he didn't want to. He wanted to obscure his own identity, which he did.
Well, the wonderful thing about the surrealism is you're supposed to have things hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, he could hide his problem. I mean, people could almost laugh, right? No face, apple, an apple, you know. And I mean, meanwhile, things are not so funny. Let's see. Poem 44 is meditation. There you go. Here's meditation. I forgot you have such a great camera. You see the three worms with the candle heads?
No. Can't see it that far away.
Can't see that far away?
No.
Well, there are three white
I see worms.
worms, but they do have candle lights.
Oh.
And instead of having a head, they have a top of a candle.
Oh.
So the white worms, I call them wax worms. They could be candles.
Mhm.
Okay? Three wax worms crawl along a darkling shore, with each a candle flame where head should be. The biggest is the nearest, and the more removed the smaller. Since we have but three, a thought may come. They are a family. To father, mother, child, their heads alight, hot fiery, doomed to cold mortality. Conceptually, they attain a height not known before, cerebral region bright, all lit up the head part. Yet human-like their bodies curving, they, if passionate as we are, know the night of death, a final price that persons pay for sex. Bataille would talk about that lack. Magritte, the wily, slyly brought it back. I should explain, I read an essay by French philosopher Georges Bataille, and he tells about biology, and he says, death is the price we pay for sex. The reason is that if you're an amoeba or a paramecium, you have nothing to do with romantic love. And if you want kids, how do you get them?
You break out, you split apart.
You split. Not, you don't have to split with your spouse. You just split.
Split your own body.
And nobody dies. Interesting, isn't it? So I'm thinking of these worms. They could be like male emblems. They could be phallic symbols. And though they have that candle, candles burn out in a hurry. And so the father, mother, child, being more like humans than like worms, may pay the price. Huh. Challenging, huh?
Yes.
I think I have time for another. Oh, this is a very important one. This is Time Transfixed. Let's see what page the poem is. Okay, 75. Here we are. They translated it time transfixed in this book, but I translated it duration daggered. I think of it as a very human kind of a problem, even though it looks technological. Do you see what's happening? You've got a train that seems to be exiting from the back of the fireplace, and it's trailing its smoke behind it. But
Yes,
it's arrested there.
Yeah.
That's a train engine.
And the clock is on the top.
Yeah.
And there's a mirror.
Yeah, that's right, a clock and a something.
Something looks like a mirror to me.
It could be, but there's nothing. Oh, yeah, that's right, it is. It is a mirror. Sort of rusty gray, and unlike most mirrors.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's.
Okay?
Yeah, I can
That's
see
the
the train.
picture.
It looks like a toy train that's actually.
Yes, it does look like that. Something from childhood. I agree with you. And that's helpful. Duration daggered, stabbed and cut and killed. To cap the mantle is an empty frame. I didn't realize it was a mirror, but then now you just showed me. Nor criminal nor victim has a name. Not time itself, a human spirit stilled. From out the fireplace heads a locomotive that steams ahead, gets stuck, embedded there. Combusting phallus, marbled in midair, half-mocked, remaining male, a token votive to ruction self that later might have been, had time not stopped. A halfway petrifaction. What was the dire immobilizing action? It happened that Magritte was but 13. His mother, young, had drowned. A suicide. Heart daggered he. A part of him had died. So he's a 13-year-old kid, immobilized in time. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I can do one more.
Yeah, right. Get back before the fog, before the fog comes.
Yeah.
On the hill.
On 81 is perspective. And this actually ties in very nicely with the themes we've been going through. The painting is a kind of parody or meditation on a very famous painting in France by, have you ever heard of the painter Jacques David? You have, good. He painted in the time of Napoleon. He painted classical themes. And he painted Madame Récamier, an aristocratic woman, reclining on a couch in a white dress. And now what happened?
But I don't see her, no.
Huh?
She's not there.
She's not there. Her coffin is there.
Oh.
And the dress that she wore, it seems a bit of it is hanging out from under the coffin. Okay?
Yeah. Did someone die in the bathtub?
Yes, that's right. Yes, he painted that.
Yeah, the Revolutionary.
Death of Marat in the bathtub. That's it, perhaps his most famous painting. Thank you for mentioning that. You really do know this painter. What does it mean that Madame Récamier became a seated coffin? Flimsy robe that trails to meet the floor, high lamp, no globe of light, though on the rug the shadows play. Walls, coffin, lamppost, couch and stool, a suite of reddish brown, with pink for matting, gray for cushion stuffing. On a dismal day indoors, that gauzy cloth alone will greet the viewer with a lonely hint of white. A stuffy rustiness, a dingy dun, exclude the air of life, the daylight sun. Parodic rage creates revenge by right. Then mother's dead, and classic grandeur too. And maidens, matrons, mistresses, they're few.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed this very much. I'm glad I came and made the effort to come out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have a new division of the book and a completely new approach beginning now. Yes? This is, I call it Gallic ballads. These are forms that I learned from French poet Villon. He called them ballades. And Rossetti translated. Huh?
The Ballad of the Hang?
Yeah. Well, if you stay around, you'll hear about it. Ballad forms were what he used, and I'd like to recite you one translated into English, because we're talking about a Frenchman who lived in the 1400s. This happened a long time ago.
Yes, and yet he's still read today.
It is wonderful, isn't it? And I've written several poems to him. I can't completely identify with him. He was a street brawler, and he was found guilty of murdering a priest in a street scuffle, and so he was arrested for robbery. He escaped from jail, and then he was arrested for murder. But in the court, he claimed that the priest had forgiven him before dying, so he was let off from that too. But then we don't know where or how he died. He disappeared rather than died. Well, this is the Ballad of Ladies of a Former Time, which was translated by Dante Gabriel Rossetti, Christina Rossetti's brother, right, back in some decades into the 19th century. And it contains the most famous line that Villon ever wrote. Do you know what that is? Where are the snows of yesteryear? Tell me now, in what hidden way is Lady Flora, the lovely Roman? Where's Hipparchia? Where's Thais? Neither of them the fairer woman. Where is Echo, beheld of no man, only heard on river and mere, she whose beauty was more than human? But where are the snows of yesteryear? Where's Eloise, that learned nun, for whose sake Abelard, I ween, lost manhood and put priesthood on? This is a very famous love affair in the Middle Ages. Eloise was a religious scholar, and Abelard was a professor of religion. And they had an illicit love affair, and one of Abelard's enemies castrated him for it. Then he went and became a monk, and she became a nun. And her letters went on to inspire French novelists for the next few hundred years. I crammed a lot into that one sentence, didn't I? Where's Eloise, the learned nun, for whose sake Abelard, I ween, lost manhood and put priesthood on? From love he won such dule and teen, grief and woe. And where, I pray you, is the queen who willed that Buridan should steer sewed in a sack's mouth down the Seine? But where are the snows of yesteryear? White Queen Blanche, like a queen of lilies, with a voice like any mermaiden. Bertha Broadfoot, Beatrice, Alice, and that good Joan, whom Englishmen at Rouen doomed and burned her there. Mother of God, where are they then? But where are the snows of yesteryear? You notice how democratic he is. He laments Joan of Arc, but also all the women that work at the local brothel. Nay, never ask this week, fair lord, where they are gone, nor yet this year, save with this much for an overwork. But where are the snows of yesteryear? Okay, that's a nice intro, isn't it? Dante Gabriel Rossetti is first class, I think, as a translator of Villon. So I wrote a ballad called Ballad of Yesters. Where are the snows of yesteryear? Fear not, Francois, nor ever fret. The famed whereof you bade us hear, though dead are living with us yet. Nor lesser worthies we forget. Fat Madge and Bertha reappear. Surviving lines of yours will let your friends endure, alluring, dear. Where are the snows of yesteryear? Where Eloise and Abelard? The first had muckle cause to grieve, the last unmanned his luck was hard. Where's Joan of Arc, that saint ill-starred, in whom the faithful yet believe? Of them whose fate was made, then marred, a tapestry your wordings weave. Where are the snows of yesterday? St. Denis and Queen Blanche and all their pageantry and lordly sway, in worldly or in heaven hall? In grandeur yet they're standing tall, nor can the devil wish away. However swart our mortal pall, the bold you show in gold array. The spirit lives, the letter too, our sadness to our laughter wed. So every yester let us view, with ardent heart and jester head. That's me anyway. I don't know if he's as cheerful as that, but I feel that the constant rhyming and the jolly rhythms can do a lot for you as a mental tonic. So here's a ballad for Villon. I can't stop thinking about him. Though poets both, I cannot claim to lead my life as you have done. Beyond compare in lyric fame, you labored proud. In rowdy fun, the round of sample crimes you've run, and though a brawler brought to shame, Apollo's wreath you've justly won, if based on deeds not free of shame. My years have calmer been, at least I'm not involved in robberies, nor have I ever killed a priest, nor in a dungeon taken ease. I only borrow, if you please, from bards and make a flagrant feast, more fit when wit accompanies, a mind from blind restraint released. I must admit I've hardly read your testament, 2,000 lines, but think you well engarlanded for daring and with flair, designs that tempt the censor who consigns to hell what in unfettered head to fit the schoolman rule declines, but which the wise will prize instead. You never had it easy, friend. Your inkwell in the winter froze. Yet heaven kens who laurels lend, and you are lauded well by those. I'm just going to move over here and get this this coat, which I will drape over the legs of the lectern, which are shining a little too bright. Guess what? I turn a page and what do I find? It's called Another Ballad for Villon. Where are the snows of yesteryear? Ah, sad, but those of yesterhour I see before me. Never fear, upon the floor the copious dower of endless alteration, power of will to find perfection, clear the proof that sweet will follow sour. They loom, the cast-off pages here. See, he wants to know where the snows of yesterday have gone. Well, I can show him the floor of my study, which is covered with snow, or what looks like snow. It's made out of the rejected pages of rejected drafts of this poem. I change the lines and they advance toward that farther shore where forms platonic in euphonic dance, euphoric bow. The prospect warms the weatherer of mental storms that found in poet countenance beguiling smile. My ballad swarms, may those Villon your laud enhance. Our joy in life means love of craft. Man's body made so cleverly, symmetric measure fore and aft, the skill fulfilled of deity. Of beauty's will, the servants we. That could be my epitaph. I love that line. I'm so happy it came to me. Of beauty's will, the servants we. They laugh the best who last have laughed. A sure, enduring guerdon glee. To them is lent whom churls thought daft. Guerdon is a word for reward in older poetry. With William, we will shake our spear. Get it? And ride in chariot of fire. That's William Blake there. The muses and their maker dear in reading champions of the lyre. Well, let's see what... Oh, she mentioned the Ballad of the Hanged. It happens that Villon did write something called Épitaphe en forme d'une ballade. Epitaph in ballad form. Maybe he was afraid of being hung. It says here, and these are his words, Frères humains qui après nous vivez, n'ayez les cœurs contre nous endurcis. Brother humans who will live after us, harden not your hearts against us. That's very moving, and here's what I have to say about it. Who say a murderer must murdered be, in turn, commit a sin and sigh, a crime. A killer having writ this poetry, not my poem, but his, forgiveness begged in all belauded rhyme. He lived as some have deemed in wilden time, yet holy mercy would appear to me, the Christ himself commended it, sublime, a teaching worthy of eternity. To keep a criminal within a cell, in order that he feel the misery, is mean and vengeful, morbid magic spell, in masquerade as rationality. Evil returned for evil's evil. We, who think inflicting ill can justify the penalty if legal, fail to see the double blindness in the eye for eye. The blindness has become not two but three, when hearers turn their view from vengeance might to rot the mind that wrought it. Never free of soul corrosion, tongue corruption, blight of calling righteous that which hides the light, from liars who to laud the hanging tree invoke the death by angry serpent height, a higher wisdom from the tempter flee. A mercy teacher of the Middle Age, a murderer, a brawler, and a thief, has taught us never war but peace to wage in ways that may destroy a void belief. That was fairly bold, wasn't it? I condemn capital punishment, absolutely. I think it's evil because two murders are not better than one. Two killed people are not better than one. But I also condemn prison. We've got to think of something smarter. Prison is not clever, and no crook was ever made better by being confined in one. Let's see. I think I can give you one more ballad. Well, maybe a ballad of hiking. How's that? That sounds like. I know it was fun to write. They all are. I wrote this for a friend of mine who's over 80, and she's gone by herself to hike in wild places in Canada and has undergone risk there. But she can't stop hiking. Maybe she has this year. I don't know. It might happen someday. A little known, yet potent truth. They err who think there ever was an El Dorado fount of youth. We found our years prolonged because we wandered on without a pause, with no regret, dismay, or ruth. The spirit and the body laws we wholly kept, I say you sooth. We feared that Ponce de Leon might be, perhaps, a little daft, but yet had long accustomed grown to love the odd, nor ever laughed. The chin was ample that we quaffed. The madness of a soul alone, as of a rower on a raft, we happily had never known. My words, like those of holy tongue, inscribe in scripture on your heart. The way to stay forever young? Be master of the hiking art. For mind is not a thing apart from flesh, and so had Homer sung, who, when an epic he would start, recited grandly, wide of lung. The man who writ these lines might be longeval if he'd will to go on lengthy hikes, the melody whereof more deeply then would flow. You see what I'm doing? I'm praising hiking, but then I'm admitting that I'm sort of lazy myself and do rather little of it. And that should conclude my Villon, and then we're ready. We're halfway through our six-pack. I hope you're liking the flavors. They do vary a lot. Here's a strange one. The next thing is called Russian Loves. I majored in Russian and even took a master's degree in it, and I love Russian poetry. And what I do in this section is I offer a translation of a Russian poem that I liked, and then I write in that style. And that way I pay homage, sometimes multiple homages. Occasionally I'll translate a poem and then write 10 replies. But these are my mentors, and they have been since I was a teenager. In fact, one of the very first Russian poems I ever memorized when I was about 18 or 19 was called In the West. Let me turn to it. turn to the poem I wrote about it. Yes. It's gorgeous. In this poem, a man is comforting a lady, his lady friend, or a friend of his, who he knows has just experienced something awful. And he tells her that she should feel obliged to, or rather permitted to, express herself as much as ardently as she wants. Get it all out of her system. Not feel constrained to smile, but cry if she wants to, and moreover cry as much as she wants to, even all night long, because the nightingale is setting the example. He laments his lost love until the morning. So I'll say you the poem first in Russian. Запад гаснет вдали бледно-розовой, звезды неба усеяли чистые. Соловей свищет в роще березовой, и травою запахло душистою. Знаю, что к тебе в думушку вкралась я, знаю сердца немолчные жалобы. Не хочу я, чтоб ты притворялась и к улыбке себя принуждала бы. Твое сердце болит безотрадное, в нем не светит звезда ни единая. Плачь свободно, моя ненаглядная, пока песня звучит соловьиная. Соловьиная песня унылая, что как жалоба катится слезная. Плачь, душа моя, плачь, моя милая, тебя небо лишь слушает звездное. Okay, here's what he said so far as I can make it come through in English. That, by the way, the poet was Alexei Tolstoy. He was a distant cousin of the guy that wrote War and Peace. In the past, it says, in the west, pallid, and I can squeeze those together into past. In the west, pallid sun rays were dying, heaven pure with the starlight bestrewn, summer grass aromatic in sighing. From a grove came a nightingale tune. Oh, foreboding invading the mind, the disquieting plaint of the heart. Don't pretend, tell your thought unconfined, and don't smile if constrained to by art. Your uncomforted heart's brooding under burdens dark and bereft of a star. Then weep freely, my beauty, my wonder, while the nightingale croons from afar. The uncomforted nightingale's sigh is a weeping lament streaming on. Cry, my soul, cry, my lovely one, cry. Starry heaven will hearken till dawn. And I wrote a reply to that. 40 years I've recited each word that the poet declaimed to the maiden. Comes the comfort of bard and of bird, with a heart-heavy memory laden. I have learned that a crying will cleanse, a lamenting will aid a forgetting. Not unmanly to say it, my friends. When the waning pale sunlight is setting, should a melody enter the brain, from the harmony art of Tolstoy, or of Bach, or of Mozart, a pain you distill in a limbeck of joy. Tonal yoga is not broken by death, nor deep grief, mere disease of the breath. Now those last two lines I would never presume to say to her. Those were spoken to me. I say things like that. When I get angry, I think, listen, your breathing is upset. Being mad is nothing other than to suffer from a disease of breathing. So take some deep breaths and you'll be a lot better, a lot quicker. All right. Now, we'll try something a little in my usual more sanguine mode. This is a translation, I won't give the Russian this time, from Pushkin, considered Russia's greatest poet, and it's called Cloud. A very strange poem. The storm swept away, you're the only cloud gliding. Alone in the blueness, the brightness abiding. Alone you bring on a disconsolate shade. Alone you can frighten what lightness had made. The sky only moments ago you had covered, and threatening lightnings about you yet hovered, and thunderous mystery sounding again, the famishing furrows you nourished with rain. Enough! Go away! It is time that you vanished. The earth is refreshed, and the storm clouds are banished. The breezes caressing the leaves of the trees will send you away from the heavenly peace. I wrote a reply to that, very much in the mood of what you just heard. The stream disemboguing, the snow disappearing, a cloudlet effusing, a maelstrom a-clearing, they'll soon have vanished, evaporable. The heavens be empty that lately were full. The droplet wherefrom we have sprung will be drying. What need have we now, the horizon descrying, to see whether sun or a hurricane rise? The fire, like the water, will darken our eyes. What came goes away, what was whole will be riven. The growing encroacher be chidden, be driven, be carried away as he harried the prey, be married to death at the end of the day. Takes a minute to recover. None of these things where I really give way to some kind of stormy onslaught are, I feel, the real me. I'm a guy with happy brain chemicals. And you'll see that in the next poem coming up. No movers and shakers, be maker and shaper. Things seen on a screen or perused in the paper are often quite petty. Confetti, or worse, be mindful and find what is worthy in verse. A day when to lyric you've not been excited is draining, vampiric, benosic, and blighted. Let fire Dionysul be poured through your veins, the light of Apollo spread over the plains. The surge of the surf and the boom of the breakers declared that the day is prepared for the makers. Stand up to the summons, let bursting to birth, new epic, new legend replenish the earth. Be falcon and hawk with the aptness of raptors. In vertical verse let your lines be the captors to catch a surrendering soul in a spell of upwardly coupling no quiet may quell. I've got to admit that poem is partly inspired by a lyric by Walt Whitman describing two eagles mating in the air. Well, I'll do one more in this rhythm. This a poem I wrote when I discovered that the last 4 lines of Goethe's Faust are pretty much in this rhythm. It took Goethe, Germany's greatest poet, 60 years to write Faust, Germany's greatest poem. And when he finally wrote the last lines, what he wrote was this. Alles Vergängliche ist nur ein Gleichnis. Das Unzulängliche, hier wird's Ereignis. Das Unbeschreibliche, hier wird's getan. Das ewig Weibliche zieht uns hinan. No, marvelously beautiful and very triple metered. What he says is, everything transient is but a likeness. The inaccessible here is event. The indescribable here will be done. The eternal feminine draws us upward. Imagine, that's the last line he leaves the reader with after 60 years. The eternal feminine draws us upward. So few verses in the world are more famous, but oddly enough, my reaction hasn't really been dealt with sufficiently in the criticism. Because when I heard the eternal feminine draws us upward, I thought, well, not only the eternal feminine draws me upward, but how about also the temporary transitory feminine? I don't make big distinctions. And I think that Goethe also would have liked an interpretation that is both heavenly and earthly, because one of the characters in that final scene where these lines appear, and where Faust enters into heaven at last, he had supposedly sold his soul to the devil, but through a little poetical trickery, we can manage that. And in the end, he is pardoned and ascends on high. But one of the characters at that point points out that Virgin Mary and Venus are of equal birth and of equal rank. Ebenbürtig is the German word. I'm not making this up. So Goethe has, in a way, a very strange mystical attitude and atmosphere in his writing, but he is not orthodox. So here's what I write. And by the way, I didn't think that the eternal feminine draws us upward sounds very good. It isn't in the triple meter, and furthermore, it has a lot of other flaws. So here's the way I do it. Feminine unending is hailing us higher. Sounds maybe a little more like James Joyce than Goethe, but to hail, H-A-L-E, means to draw, to pull. Feminine unending is hailing us higher, poet proclaimed to a heavenly lyre, head ready, crownward to see where we go, yet we think downward to feel where we grow. Eager the fever and ardent the fire, avid ad astral and lambent desire, soter, that's Greek for savior, the role that the lower would show, sly in arising, in climbing not slow. Musal perusal of tunes may inspire, flame to requite in a name we require, height teaching right of an organ more low, might reaching tone solar plectral to glow. Pleiades gowned in a flower attire, speak of the hues that imbue us when nigher, being the real, where the dreamer will know, feminine unendingly beckoning flow. Maybe you can tell I taught literature for 35 years. I could lecture on that for an hour. It wouldn't be hard at all. I'll read you one more in this section, okay? This is really fun. It's poem 127. A colleague in the Russian department called my attention to this little four-liner. Pushkin, the greatest poet in Russia, wrote it after he had finished one of his very finest works, the Boris play that is made into the Mussorgsky opera. Have you seen it, maybe? Boris Godunov is called in Russian. It's Boris is probably one of the greatest operas ever written. I got to sing a part of it, the coronation scene in University Chorus, and it was thrilling. So here, when evidently Pushkin, who had learned a lot from Shakespeare in writing this marvelous thing, was very proud of it. And here's what he said when he finished. And now my tragedy is done. I've read it through alone, aloud. Pushkin, I clapped my hands, so proud. Son of a bitch! Son of a gun! Now I wrote a reply. I toned down the language a bit. And so the cheer. It must be fun. The spirit bloody but unbowed. Helios here to greet the crowd with benefaction, benison. The soul a holy race hath run, with all the power the gods allowed, and more. For unabashed, uncowed, the lightning bolt he holds will stun, by thunder glory, such as none would know whose life was under cloud. He reaps in joy, in tears who plowed. The muse embracing now her son, the weapon of a megaton, with Jovian power ugly browed, that menaces with shudder shroud, no threat proposes to the one who'd on his own a fate outspun. The tree of Eden, heaven bowed, protects the votary avowed. The poet jovial place had won. In other words, he earned the right to laugh the last. All right. You know, we're not too far behind our schedule that I had planned for the six-pack. We turn now to a most peculiar thing. Everything is pretty odd that I'm doing tonight. These are Kafka reactions. And what I do is I take his flash fictions, often things he seems to have written in a couple of minutes, and then I write a poem about them. And here's an example. Poem 155. The Kafka is over here. I have retrieved it, and we'll read Kafka's words and then mine. Okay, the wish to be a red Indian. I'll get that later. If one were only an Indian, instantly alert and on a racing horse, leaning against the wind, kept on quivering jerkily over the quivering ground, until one shed one's spurs, for there needed no spurs, threw away the reins, for there needed no reins, and hardly saw that the land before one was smoothly shorn heath, where horse's neck and head would already be gone. I think that's rather cheerful. As rapidly as vision travels, he, because impatient for a transformation, abandons matter. Speed made levitation. One's only lurching quivers jerkily until one shed the spur, and look, he throws away the reins. No need for either now. Horse head or neck, too heavy anyhow. They disappear. No need, of course, for those. The Indian's a shaman, unashamed. The goal, self-changing and attained with speed. The role, wide-ranging, from the pain of need becomes the pleasurable wind rush aimed at transformation to a seer spirit. From vehicle new freed, we're getting near it. You know what? Notice what I do in my Kafka poems. I a lot of times just turn them into verse. I don't have to say much. I don't want to say too much. He likes riddling kind of things. His special talent is to write a poem that reads as if it were a dream. And that's why it doesn't matter really what form he writes, short or long, he's never going to finish it. Maybe you know that his 3 novels, the ones for which he became world famous, are all unfinished. The Trial, The Castle, and America, he didn't finish. Now Prometheus, 157. He tells Prometheus, I don't even have to read his precise language, although maybe I should, because it's let's try it. 452, that isn't hard. I debate with myself whether I need to even bother reading the originals, because I have pretty much transferred them into verse. But anyway, here's what he says. There are 4 legends concerning Prometheus. According to the first, he was clamped to a rock in the Caucasus for betraying the secrets of the gods to men, and the gods sent eagles to feed on his liver, which was perpetually renewed. You've heard that, haven't you? Prometheus wanted to save us from being destroyed. Originally, Zeus had wanted to do away with us altogether. All the father gods and all the father god religions have this problem sooner or later. Through fire or flood, they wish to put an end to the human race. And Prometheus gave us fire to survive. According to the second legend, Prometheus, goaded by the pain of the tearing beaks, pressed himself deeper and deeper into the rock until he became one with it. According to the third, his treachery was forgotten in the course of thousands of years. Forgotten by the gods, the eagles, forgotten by himself. According to the fourth, everyone grew weary of the meaningless affair. The gods grew weary, the eagles grew weary, the wound closed wearily. There remained the inexplicable mass of rock. The legend tried to explain the inexplicable. As it came out of a substratum of truth, it had in turn to end in the inexplicable. You know, he could have made that a lot shorter, because the only thing he has to tell us that's new is that Prometheus shrank back into the rock and became rock. There's a sense in which this is surrealism too, isn't it? You can see that in a Magritte picture. So here we go. Clamped and becoming rock, forgotten, weary, all of the 4 are ways to say the one. The rock, inert, life-throttled mass, not fun to say or be it. Gnostics might be leery, yet it's commended. Resolution taught that's another story that he wrote, that to avoid a life of lie, we ought to be inert, a rock foreseer each. That's what we heard our Father Francis teach. Franz, Kafka means Francis. The substrate grounding truth we can't explain. The skull's a rock, but why a human brain? Made for Promethean longing, which is pain. Till petrified, P's God life was a lie. He'd no alternative. He couldn't die. Rock gods and god rocks. Laugh a little, guy. You know, when I wrote that poem a long time ago, and I thought, you know, Kafka is just too glum about life generally. Why doesn't he lighten up a little? And now I think he did. It's reported by at least one testimony that when he was writing some of the most despairing passages, supposedly in the trial, he was giggling. So, interestingly, well, I'd like to end off my Kafka presentation before I go to the last unit of the six-pack with a point of view on Kafka that's a little unusual. I'd like to read just a short passage. It's not a philosophy fiction this time, just an excerpt from a short story he wrote called Blumfeld, an Elderly Bachelor. I didn't know it existed. I'm not even sure it was in the original version of the translations that I read in 1971. But in this reprint, as in many others since, it has been included. Blumfeld is a bachelor, and I'll read you what Kafka has to tell us about him. Okay, here's Blumfeld coming home from work. While taking the key from his pocket outside his room, he is startled by a sound coming from within. A peculiar sound, very lively but regular. Since Blumfeld has just been thinking of dogs, it reminds him of the sounds produced by paws, pattering one after the other over a floor. But paws don't rattle, so it can't be paws. He quickly unlocks the door and switches on the light. He is not prepared for what he sees, for this is magic. Two small white celluloid balls with blue stripes jumping up and down, side by side on the parquet. When one of them touches the floor, the other is in the air. It's a game they never stop playing. Blumfeld gropes in the air to find out whether they are hanging from some threads. No, they're moving entirely on their own. A pity Blumfeld isn't a small child who two balls like these would have been a happy surprise for him, whereas now the whole thing gives him rather an unpleasant feeling. It's not quite pointless, after all, to live in secret as an unknown bachelor now that someone, no matter who, has penetrated his secret and sent him these two strange balls. For 20 to 30 more pages, you get to hear about the balls and how impossible they are to catch and gather hold of. And if you put them in the drawer, they rattle all night and you can't sleep. So the trouble with Blumfeld then is that he's been accosted by two blue balls. Somebody just turned out the light on that one. Are you familiar with this idea? It's true that they're not altogether blue. They have white coloring with a blue stripe, which also happens to be the color of the Jewish prayer shawl, if you're interested. But blue balls are a traditional way to refer to, what you call it, testicular ejaculatory deprivation on a long-term basis. The balls start to turn blue, and that's what this guy has. Well, you can see I couldn't pass that up. I had to write about it. Why isn't this ever discussed in a Kafka course? Let me tell you, nobody writes about it. And I've combed the literature, and there isn't anything. This one is not this book, but I've got another book devoted entirely to criticism of the short stories. People pass this over as if it never existed. Okay, now you can see what my attitude to Kafka is. Some people, including this, the person on the cover of the other book, says he may be our last holy writer. And another one calls his writing numinous. That is, as if he were a religious or a saintly guy. But to me, he'll always be the clown prince. Blumfeld's two balls. Poor Blumfeld, alas, had discovered one morning two celluloid balls, with no hint of a warning, had come to his room, were obstructing his way, and followed him always, whatever he'd say. They're white with blue stripes, he can see it quite clearly, with talus-like colors. Coincidence merely? The blue is the part that will make him feel sore. Blue balls are a syndrome we've heard of before. All critics I've read have neglected the story, though I would proclaim it a comical glory. A bachelor well might be suffering from a sexual abstinence making him numb. That saddens, of course, but what greatly surprises are all of the pranks the twin ball mind devises. The one of them jumps while the other falls down, then rolls they reverse, each a wonderful clown. He enters a room with a rug where the leaping is muffled, less clatter preventing him sleeping. Yet both have a kind of a rattle inside. So long as they're active, the tone will abide. He picks up one ball and he holds it up higher. The other, in mischief, now shows a desire to leap to his face, to retrieve his lost friend. Oh, dreadful the comedy! When will it end? The home is a castle, or so we were thinking. But into what trial our hero is sinking? Suppose to America now he might slip. Blue balls, would they follow him into the ship? Okay, that concludes my Kafka, but so we have one more offering in the six-pack. I call it Inferno Update. And I subtitle it A Sonic Tour of Hell with Other Treats. What I did was, when somebody asked me to give a course on a little 4-session course, this is the non-credit program of Lyceum that's sponsored by Binghamton University in Bard, I said, okay, I'd do that. And so I gave the 2-hour lectures that constituted it. But I gave the course in an unusual way. I wrote a sonnet of 14 lines for every canto of about 4 pages that Dante wrote. And he wrote 34 cantos. I wrote 34 sonnets. And I distributed them. And we read them aloud, and I talked about it. I said, well, that's what I think happens in this canto. What's your view on it? It was a lot of fun to teach that way. All you have to do is like writing sonnets, and you're on your way. Do you know anything about this poem? Maybe you remember the beginning? Let's see. In middle of the pathway of our life, nel mezzo del cammin de nostra vita, mi ritrovai per una selva oscura che la diritta via era smarrita. In the middle of the pathway of our life, I found myself lost in the woods, having lost the right path. So, in other words, he must be, I think, 35, because it used to be supposed that you, according to the Bible, would live on the average 70 years. And he's found himself in a forest. And eventually a guide shows up and leads him on a tour through hell. Then the next book they go to purgatory and they wind up in heaven. And he has a vision of God, about which sadly he doesn't say very much. One would like to know a little more about that. Okay, I'll start. Tooling along the turnpike of our life, I found myself within a darkened wood. I grabbed my cell phone and I called my wife. Dear, can you help me? Really, if you could, that would be awesome. I have no idea how I arrived here. Thought I understood how to read maps, but there appears to be a bit of amnesia. When I looked around, there was a panther, lion, she-wolf, see, a whole zoo let loose, unguarded circus ground. Quiet, go back to sleep, she growled. It seems your brain goes wild at every little sound. Our puppy barked. What rabid monster themes. I've had it with your midlife crisis dreams. You can imagine what that course was like, something a little different. Canto 2. Deo volente aut musa volante. I translate it right away in the next line. Deity willing or damsel be flying. Fire-flowered, lighter than Florentine Dante, I will arise for a sky you descrying. Beatrice, mild yet alive to the sighing, making amends to the mendicant dreaming, led the bleak seer to levels allying, grave Alighieri to lucidly gleaming. Little pun there on St. Lucy, who was in the chain of command that sent a guide down to give him his supernatural journey. High through the vastitude, yearningly teeming, bursting with hope of the heavenly virgin, burning desire for a bliss beyond seeming, see a belated beatitude burgeon. Pterodactylic my flight over space, Dante depicted, be favored with grace. You know a pterodactyl, that's a kind of a winged dinosaur. A ptero means wing and dactyl means finger. It means winged fingers. And that the bony look of the wings, it looks like there could be finger bones joined by membrane. And I'm saying that I'm a pterodactyl in that I have winged fingers because I type so fast on the computer. You notice I don't think this poetry is really so terribly easy. Not all of the meanings come through always immediately at once. But my hope is that the music will be sweet enough that it will draw you back. And you will wonder, it sounded so nice. Now, what was he saying, if anything? Okay. Now here, the next canto is about the indecisive, the ones that are blown back and forth by every trend or wind, the ones that follow the bandwagon or any flag that's flapping. The special place for them in hell, isn't that interesting? In other words, get out and vote, right? The indecisive is a caitiff wretch, a coward captive of the latter trend, by gadflies, hornets goaded to no end, a banner chasing that he'll never fetch back, and for whom? For he has not a friend. The ones who come to Acheron's dark side feel the same willless will as did the coward, though over them the frown of Charon lowered. Fear to desire is turned, they scarce abide their fallen fate of leaves, their waiting end. No ray to favor on the dusk champaign, except the flaming wheel's vermilion light around the boatman eyes inflamed with pain. Beatrice, Mary, Lucy Benedict. We're saying a last line prayer to those dear ladies. I taught the course from the translation by Longfellow. It isn't always known that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow didn't just write about Paul Revere. He was a professor of Romance languages at Harvard, and he translated the entire Divine Comedy. And the edition that we had was Longfellow's very beautiful writing, combined with illustrations by Doré. That's just about the best. Fear to desire is turned for all in hell. The pagan sages, though in high desires, they cultivate their minds. What grace requires, yet lack, though ever bent on doing well. Fear to desire is turned for all who dream. Civilization's rebel malcontents, who dared to overturn the rudiments of reason rule, are punished. That's our theme. Fear-free desire's reward is metaphor, imposed by judgment of a moral law, to symbolize the willful urge by raw, strict force distorted, that it might the more intently show the sinner as grotesque, so vermin learn in legends Kafkaesque. It actually says at one point in the Inferno that here, throughout hell, fear is turned into desire. You desire the punishment that you're getting, because it isn't really so much a punishment as a cartoon version of what you wanted all along. The humiliating part is that it's a caricature, a cartoon version. But psychologically, it's a fascinating thing to say and hear, because in psychology, of the Freudian kind particularly, fear is inseparable from desire. Desire is inseparable from fear, because if the primal love object was the mother and she's taboo, that desire is terrifying. And insofar as substitutes in later life resemble her, some of the terror may remain. Although there's other terror attaching to love, you don't need that for a reason. It certainly doesn't have to be your only reason. There are plenty more. In fact, the main reason that makes love frightening is vulnerability. What you're in love with is a free being like your own with free will. And that's a variable. Well, we're coming to the end. Maybe I'll just read you the final canto. That's not even a Cliff's Notes tour, is it? But it gives you a sense of what the flavor is like of the last bottle in the six-pack. Even as a Saracen, a Trinity, reversely mirrored Christian, had, you learn that in Song of Roland. The Christians worship the Trinity and the Saracens have their own Trinity. It's interesting, and that happens all the way through moral allegories. It often occurs that the villains look just like the righteous, except they have a different label attached. Even as the Saracen, a Trinity, reversely mirrored Christian, had, so we, here at hell's center, find in parody, triple-mouthed devil, gnashing victims three. Cassius, Brutus, Judas, chewed as 'twere, traducers whom their lover Lucifer, their flesh ingesting, hopes that harbinger of all their evils he may reinter. And so a super Cerberus he'll be. That's the three-headed dog. Trinities have to be everywhere in hell symbolism. It's as if in a good versus evil stories you're fighting the bad part of yourself. And that's why the two enemies look so much alike. And so a super Cerberus he'll be, grotesquely dogged in his comedy, from which without applause we issue free, and southern love-moved star, a swooning sea. Put sighing every penalty aside, and life at pardon's heart might nigh abide. That's a very packed couplet. If you forget about penalties, then you might forget about the most striking and maybe offensive fact about the Dante Inferno, which is that it's a cone. You go down, and finally you get to the center. And where is the center? It's the center of the earth. William Blake, the poet and engraver, found this so scandalous. He said, Dante must have been an atheist. You do not put the devil at the center of the world. That devil does not belong at the center of the world. He is at the center of hell, and indeed hell punishments are the center of hell. And it would be nice, putting every penalty aside, if we get rid of the punishment notion. I tried that in my little sermon against capital punishment and even jail time, and find life at pardon's heart. Then we would find love at the center of the earth. It is warm enough. It's quite molten down there. No worries about that. Well, I think then that can conclude our six-pack. Thank you.